The following is brought to you by our friends over at Actable. Actable gives you the power to profit. Please check them out at actable.com and enjoy today's show. Hey, Anthony, how are you doing today?
Good. Unfortunately, I sat in a lot more traffic than normal.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing we're recording this episode, so we're not late today for once, which is a relief. I hope you're having a great start to the year, getting back into the commuting, going back and forth to New England a lot.
Yes, sir. So I'm missing our intro for our show, though.
I know it's because I'm not going to run the old one anymore, and I haven't created a new one because you know what?
I think we should talk about it. Shouldn't we talk about it?
Do you want to act it out?
No, but you just make a decision. We're not doing it. I don't agree with it.
Yeah.
Listen, I think you're wrong, and I'm going to announce it here that you're 100% wrong because people want to see your hairdo.
They really do.
You're taking it away from people.
People are stopping me in airports, and they're like, Glenn, please go back to showing us your out-of-control hair from the COVID days. Yeah, I know.
I'm just telling you.
All right, so I hope we didn't just screw up our opportunity because, Anthony, today we have got a really super special hotel. I'm talking about a world-class designer who's set the stage for some of the best dining experiences that I've had in my life over there. And no, we're not talking about my mom. That's it, Anthony. Nothing. I'm getting nothing out of you.
We'll talk about Glenn's mom.
Yeah. All right, let's welcome the incredible Adam Tihany to our show. Hello, sir. Welcome. What an honor it is to have you join us today. How's it going?
Glenn, you didn't warn me that this was a comedy show.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the word errors is silent in his statement.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
I heard you guys talking about it as I was getting on. What is your background?
Oh, it's a corridor of a space I designed on a very large cruise ship, and it's de facto the only museum at sea. It's a museum of Italian design and excellence on board of the Costa Smeralda ship, which I was the creative director for. So, these arches are actually a long corridor, and you walk through the arches, and on the right and the left, the museum develops. So it's a kind of a Kubrick-ish experience.
Yeah. It's really cool. I just want to let all the viewers know, if you're listening to the audio feed, this image as well as other images we're going to be talking about today are in the show notes. You could just click on that. Anthony, go ahead.
No, it's absolutely phenomenal and futuristic. I was going to say, I thought you designed the first restaurant on Mars.
I did, but Elon Musk didn't like the food.
How could you not like astronaut ice cream? Come on, Elon. What is wrong with you?
I wanted to pick a background that's a bit more architectural. This is obvious because we tried with the producer here to pick something, but you always cover the main table or the bar or this. Here you just cover a person that's in the corridor. Watch.
Yeah. So I'd love to know, how did you get started? What was the first moment that you said, this is my life? I need to create atmospheres and things for people to enjoy.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go. I said, that's my question. I usually ask that question.
Okay, go ahead. Ask the question.
The question I usually ask.
So it's a long story, but I'm going to tell it very briefly and fast because otherwise half an hour will be gone.
Yeah.
I studied design and architecture in Milan, Italy. Mm-hmm. I'm originally was born in Transylvania, which is the only place in the world that it sounds sexy is in the United States, because every place else it says, "Oh, Romania." Yeah. Right. I grew up in Israel, and after my military service, I went to study in Milan, Italy, and I got to Milan in 1968. Maybe tell you a little bit about my age, and there was the universities were in upheaval because of the Red Summer in France, and nobody was teaching anything. So I took an apprentice job at the design office, architecture office, and that's how I learned the profession. And at the time, Italy being, poor and underdeveloped, there was no work in architecture.
Right.
So architects did whatever they could do and started designing furniture and accessories and packaging and lighting. And this is how the contemporary Italian design was born. And I was there at that period, and I learned to do all these kind of things. Moving forward, 5 years later, I arrived in the United States. I worked at a big firm before that did some office interiors. Somehow I put together 3 pennies and I opened my office.
All right, so I got to ask you a question, because I believe you also spent some time growing up in Israel, right? So
yeah.
So it seems to me that you've been informed by a lot of different global cultures. So when you came to New York, how did that help inform your design direction and what was authentic to you as a designer?
Well, I came to New York as an import. The company that hired me came to Italy to look for an Italian designer because they thought, Italian designer was the thing to do.
Right.
And instead of bringing in Italian products, they wanted to bring the designer. So my arrival here was very purposeful. I was supposed to, practice Italian design, which I did. But when I went on my own, I was in a sort of a conundrum because people ask me, what do you do? What kind of thing you do? Because you can say, I do Italian design. It doesn't mean anything. You said, are you an interior designer? Are you an architect? Are you a, furniture designer? I said, no, I'm all of the above. For me, design, you give me the problem, I give a solution. This is what I do. Long story short, I was starving for 3 years because nobody will give me work. I just refused to pigeonhole myself.
Good for you. That's such a good thing to do.
I luckily I had $40,000 saved that kept me through for 4 years almost.
Yeah.
One day, one morning, actually, at 4:00 in the place that we all met at 4:00, which was called Studio 54, if you remember. Are you too young for this stuff?
I was too young to be there, but I was old enough to know what was happening there.
I'm sitting next to this guy in some kind of, in the fog of the morning. He says to me in this really thick French accent, he said, are you a designer? I said, oui. And he says, you want to do a restaurant? I said, what? He said, the restaurant.
Yeah.
I said, shit, I'll do anything. Are you kidding me? I'm starving here, whatever. And turns out it was 1980. The guy had the license to open the legendary Parisian brasserie La Coupole in New York City.
Wow.
And he hired me to design this place. It was the first legitimate grand cafe in New York City, 225 seats, which nobody heard of. And I was given free reign, literally free reign, because the guy was busy at Studio 54 and doing all kinds of things that you don't want to talk about.
Listen, I understand a very Puritan environment there.
So the guys gave me free reign, and I designed architecture, the interiors, the lighting, the furniture, the menus, the outfits for the way I went to Paris to find the chandelier guy.
What a great opportunity.
Suddenly, in this microcosm of restaurants, I found my calling. So I went out and bought a sign that said Adam Tihany, restaurant designer. And this is how profession was born. I was the first person in this country to call themselves a restaurant designer out of desperation, because I said, maybe that's the only way I can be Italian,
Yeah, right.
So here we go.
So let's back it up a little bit, okay? Because, I really like talking about the struggle of how you became who you are, because that's like when you're looking at the fork in the road, right? It's you do left and you're in business. You do right and you're in business, right? So I want to talk about in 1970s, having 40 grand in the bank was like having $2 billion in the bank. Number one. And number two, what was happening in your business that talk about something that happened in your business before you got that contract that you almost closed your business. Was rent due? Was the landlord chasing you? And also the third point of that, and Glenn will remind us all 3 points because I'll forget. How did you write the first contract not knowing how to write a contract for your first business, for your first client?
Okay. So when I opened my office, meaning I left the company that I was working for and dipped into the unknown, I had a little room on 61st Street and off Lexington Avenue with a insane assistant secretary woman who was off the walls, and myself, and she had a cat. And what I started doing was anything I could put my hand on that will pay for the rent and will keep us afloat. And predominantly was residential work, was helping friends with an apartment, was designing a little loft, or then some small retail stuff. Mind you, I truly was piped into the Italian community in New York at the time. And that was also the time.
A different Italian community than Anthony was plugged into at the time.
The no red sauce community. I'm talking about. So I designed the first showroom for a fashion designer called Gianni Versace, for example.
Wow.
At the time, these people were just opening business, and I'm being fluent in Italian, and they thought that I understand American culture. I was kind of the bridge in between. So from these little bits and pieces, I did a little, furniture store. I did a little showroom. I did apartments. I clubbered together enough stuff that kept me afloat. But again, I at the time I wasn't sure that's my identity. I didn't want to be just an interior designer or, an architect that does interior designer. I wanted to do something that made me happy, physically and emotionally. And what I did not know at the time is that hospitality business was in my blood.
Right.
I had no idea. I mean, I think the first restaurant I've ever been to in my life, I was 17 years old.
Wow.
And it was a Chinese restaurant in Jerusalem. That would be enough to dissuade you from doing anything in the restaurant business. I had no idea that I was like, that it was turning me on, this business, that I actually liked to make people happy for some reason. So
it feels good.
I struggled like every person at the beginning of their life, working and doing all kinds of odd jobs and, babysitting at night and doing whatever I could to keep.
Wow.
But the calling really came with this La Coupole thing. And I remember the day this place opened. La Coupole opened in the February in 81. In a major snowstorm in New York City. It was like 1.5 feet of snow. And there were lines of people trying to get in, and Andy Warhol couldn't get in.
What?
And the next day it was in the Post, and the place became the hottest place in New York City instantly. So again, it's all...
Hey, you made page 6 back then, right?
The restaurant did, not me.
Yeah, but I'm saying that's all you needed to be absolutely successful. Fortunately, you didn't make it. There was a lot of people who did for all the wrong.
So if you were on 61st in Lexington, do you remember a restaurant called Sign of the Dove?
Of course. Well, next door to my office was a place called Gino's, if you remember.
Sure.
talking about it from Italian to the next,
Right.
Gino, that was the area,
Yeah.
So, of course, I remember Sign of the Dove.
So Sign of the Dove, I was thinking maybe you designed it. Sign of the Dove, Contrapunto, Arizona 206. I worked for that gentleman, Dr. Santo. I don't know if you remember
Right.
Dr.
Of
Santo.
course.
He was a very famous restaurateur that was
Yeah.
putting himself through medical school and then decided to go into the restaurant business. I ran a company for him called Ecce Panis, which means behold the bread. He had a bread company. You remember the bread company?
I remember the Echepanis. I didn't know it was you.
It was a bread company that I ran that now is owned by Campbell Soup. And our second retail store was the old Tommy Hilfiger store on 65th in Lexington.
Okay, so
83rd in Lexington. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
so what year was that?
Oh, let's see. I was
Now I'm interviewing you.
probably
Sorry, he prefers that.
so that
What
was
was it? Mid
30
'80s,
years ago, 32 years ago.
mid '80s.
Yeah.
Okay, so you remember across the
No,
street,
mid 90s.
'90s.
Yeah.
You guys are young chicken here.
I'm
huh?
60. I'm 60 years old.
I didn't ask.
But anyway, the reason I asked is
The real answer is you don't look it.
Yeah.
It's not that I can see you from here, but that's okay.
Yeah. Sadly, Adam, I'm only 23, so I'm not looking.
the reason I asked is because Sign of the Dove was a restaurant that was in architectural news. It was
Oh,
a big
yeah.
it was a big deal. And he was the first restaurateur, and I don't do this. I've never heard of this before, but he used to have a restaurant where you would eat your meal and then you would get up and you would go to another room for your dessert.
Yes.
Do you
No,
remember?
he was a very interesting person, very gentle, and I liked him a lot. I worked with him later on in the '90s on a project that never happened on Park Avenue South.
Mhm.
But we had a lot of respect for each other. I was very famous at the time,
Yeah, he was a very nice man. Very. I talk about him from time to time because I came out of the hotel business for just a little bit of time to run his company, and he had two brown bags, one in the left hand, one in the right hand. And he said to me, I came into his office right across from Bloomingdale's on 60th and 3rd Avenue,
Right.
and he said, which bag? I go, which bag what? He goes, which bag? And I pointed to one of the bags, and he opens it up, and it's the payroll. He goes, pay the payroll this week. I was like, oh, that's a good decision. And the other bag had accounts payable in it. We didn't pay it that week. That's how desperate we were for cash. And that's
I thought the other bag had a bagel.
no.
No, I think that's a New York story. You get the bagel or you go do the payroll, right?
Yeah, bagel and a schmear goes a whole long way.
Well, but what was interesting about that story is that got me to understand how you run a business. Like you really have to be able to make enough money, to your point, to pay that assistant and her cat, right? You have to make sure you keep the lights on. And I was still young.
I was so poor, I didn't even have a bag to put the money in.
Yeah.
I would steal the money before I get even like.
As my mother would say, I didn't have a pot to piss it in the window to throw it out of.
Yeah. This is so great that you're sharing this with us because you become
I have a choice.
I know. I mean, you could accidentally sign off anytime, but you become such an icon to so many people in our industry. It's great to see that you started off way at the bottom and had those struggles that we all have to deal with in our life. How long until you actually started to feel comfortable with where you were and felt your career was going in? You had a couple of bucks in your pocket, so you wouldn't have to worry about payroll.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you, this coupon thing was an explosion. It was at the right place in the right time. It's the first Grand Cafe. It was the beginning of the food revolution in New York City. So I started getting phone calls. And, you do a restaurant, do this, do that. And from there, it propelled on. And, starting in New York and then going nationally and going internationally. I mean, and then from there, natural progression, hotels and cruise ships, and at this point.
You don't have to name names, but when was the first time, as you were growing, you hired somebody that you were like, okay, that person is allowing me to grow. That person is a rock star. That person is a little me.
I would say actually, maybe the third year of being in business, I hired this young French gentleman who was immensely talented, and together we were an interesting couple. We bantered off back and forth, and making each one more creative than the next. His passion was really residential work. I mean, he loved doing apartments and houses and stuff. And eventually, we parted ways. But I've been in business for over 45 years, and in these 45 years, and I had a lot of people coming through my doors. A lot of them are pretty well-known designers these days and stuff. The truth is, I think I can count on two hands the people that actually made a difference.
Wow.
That were singular talents, that were talented to the point that they didn't need any stimulus to create. I mean, my biggest lament of today of the business is that a person has an AI account and a Pinterest account, and they think they're designers.
Yeah.
They're basically editing and rehashing other people's work. But the true talent is the person you put it in an empty room with a sheet of paper and a pencil, and say, come up with an idea. Without anything. No telephone, no internet, no stimulus, no. And I can tell you, in these 45 years, I maybe have encountered 6 or 7 of them.
Wow.
But in 45 years, 6 or 7, I can say thing in my business. I've met probably 6 or 7 people that I think are incredibly talented and inspired me, and I would love to work with every one of them. So listen, that natural talent doesn't come easily. It's not only having the natural talent, it's finding your natural talent before you go on to do something else. Meaning, there's probably a lot of very successful designers that are accountants because they didn't have a spark. They weren't inspired. Their parents didn't tell them that you should go on and be a designer. You should be an architect.
Yeah.
Right?
But, Anthony, there's so many aspects to what we do as designers, and so many sources of influence and stimulus. And, people ask me the typical question, oh, what inspired you? And my answer is, what not? Everything inspires me, whether it's music, art, history, movies.
So tell me then. So I'll ask you a question, same question in a different way. Tell me something when you were walking through an airport or a street where you're like, I'm going to use that and I'm going to build something around that idea or that whatever you saw in the street or in an airport. Is there anything like that happens?
Absolutely. It's not street, airport. I'm extremely fortunate in living part of the year in one of the most beautiful places on the planet, which is a city called Paris.
Oh, I would have sworn you were going to say here in Smithtown.
No matter what you're looking at, it inspires you in one way or the other. The design comes from so many directions and so many, and it's most of the times it's sort of maybe there is a spark, which you don't even realize until you start, working on a project, and suddenly it comes to your mind, oh my God, wouldn't it be great to put like a wine tower in a restaurant where people fly up and down,
thank you for mentioning that.
So
finally get to one of my slides.
Okay, watch this. This is Oriole in Las Vegas.
The
story here was that I toured the space with the owner, and
this was prior to Mandalay Bay opening
it was under construction, Mandalay Bay.
Mm-hmm.
They had this big box, this giant concrete box, 50 by 50 by 50, and the entrance is where you see that bridge. right halfway. So
for those who don't know, you're up at Mandalay Bay and you go down to
right. But you're right in the mid-level, and there's a bridge in the middle if you see it in the picture. So I'm standing there with the owner, and he says, I said, what the hell's going on? This is amazing. He said, unbelievable space. What are you putting in here? And he says, oh, I have this incredible staircase that I bought with swans and things, and it's going down, and there's a pool, and you go in the back, and the restaurant is the back. I said, wait. Why do you want to kill the space with a big staircase and swans on it?
there.
What else would you do? I said, I don't know. Give me some time to think. He said, okay, you have until tomorrow morning at 9:00.
That's a time.
I'm having dinner with him later, and he says, I have $15,000 bottles of wine that I can't drink anymore, and I'd like to sell it in the restaurant, blah, 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 blah. So I'm racking my brain what to do, how to put like 15,000 bottles of wine in this room, which is, have to be cooled and accessed, so on and so forth. And I can't for the life of me come up with anything. So it's like 3:00 in the morning, and I can't sleep. I turn on the television, and boom, Tom Cruise floating in the air, Mission Impossible 1 on these cables. And I said, oh my God, what if we put the wines in the middle and have these angels fly up and down to get the bottles? So, asking about influence and ideas. So I 9:00 in the morning, I'm sitting in front of this guy. He has this giant desk with a telephone, and he's looking at me and says, what do you got, Tihany?
Yeah.
And I'm starting to describe this thing. And as I describe it, his hand is moving towards the phone. I'm saying, all right, here's comes security to get out of here. He picks up the phone and he says, Sally, cancel the damn stare, and hangs it up. And this project happened.
Let me do a yes and here. And this became so iconic for the restaurant and Mandalay Bay when they debuted in 1999. It really became a big part of welcoming that particular resort on the level of some of the others that have been there. This was a huge moment in Las Vegas history.
So a couple of things. When you were laughing, Glenn, I couldn't hear him. And he said what inspired him for that at 3:00 in the morning. So what was it that you were watching on the television that inspired you?
Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise hanging, what you can't hear. What's the matter with you?
He was laughing. He heard you, and I couldn't hear you because I couldn't hear.
It was Tom Cruise hanging in the space, dressed in white. It was like coming down in a vault or something, whatever it was.
Fantastic! Wow.
Yeah, it was part of the crime because there were a lot of lasers and stuff like that he couldn't go through.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, I put bottles of wine instead of lasers.
Have you been inspired to do any designs based on Get Smart, the 1960s TV series? Maybe
the shoe and the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the cone of silence. When was the last restaurant that you walked into or hotel that you walked into that you had no part in the design that you were like, wow, they did it right?
Quite a bit, actually. I mean, to me, it's not just the design. I'm a foodie, and as you guys may know, I owned restaurants for 27 years. So I'm, a restaurateur as well. So it's about the holistic experience, and the design work, when the food works, when the service works, by itself. Listen, I've spent the winter in Miami. There are so many magnificent restaurants here in terms of design, and I mean, it's truly designed on adrenaline here. But you walk in and you have a disappointing meal. The design melts away. It disappears. Suddenly you leave and you had a bad experience. You're never going to come back. I mean, sometimes you walk in and design is not particularly impressive, but everything else is. And as you eat and as you become more and more involved with the hospitality, suddenly the room becomes beautiful.
Right.
So just restaurant, to me, restaurants are not something to look at. It's something to experience. It's not like art or anything else. I mean, I can't walk into a place and say, oh, this, thousands of places are magnificent, but do they work? Do they really work? Do they really enhance the experience or not?
I think you're getting to the point of design should be there, but it shouldn't overwhelm the entire experience. It should kind of sink into being an element of the experience.
Listen, the three pillars, as you know, of successful restaurants are food, service, and design. And at different times of the life of a restaurant, these three things assume different, importance. I mean, say you don't know anything about the restaurant. You don't know about the food. You don't know about the service. But you walk in and the place looks nice. Place looks very nice and pleasant. You say, I'll give it a shot. How bad can it be? Right. Now, if the food is great and the service is great, you'll come back. You had a wonderful experience. But the design at that point, at that moment, is the number one calling card.
Right.
Because if you walk into a place and you don't know anything about it and it looks terrible, you won't even stop by. You say, I'm leaving. Now, again, what looks great for me can be terrible for somebody else.
There's a restaurant that's been named best in the world. And I've been there a couple of times. And the food is good. The service is impeccable. But I don't understand. It feels very cold and barren. And I don't think about going there because the food is good and the service is good and my dog is barking. But I just couldn't get over the design. It's too barren.
But listen, I worked with, as you know, a lot of very great chefs. And the first question that I ask them when we sit down on a business meeting, say, okay, we want to hire you, we want you to do my restaurant. I say, explain to me what you want. If I had the magic wand and give you a key to any restaurant in the world, what would it be? If they say, I would like to be at La Tour d'Argent, then I will tell them, you find another designer. Because I'm not interested in designing somebody else's restaurant. When they tell me I don't know, that's when I start getting interested in the project. Because together, we're going to explore the unknown. What is your brand of hospitality? What do you want people to feel after they leave your restaurant after a great meal? What do you want to cook in the restaurant? Cook something for me, and I will close my eyes and imagine myself at the door of an establishment that serves that type of food. And that's the dialogue that I like to have with my clients when we talk about restaurants. It's not, I want to be like Carbone. I say, if you want to be like Carbone, hire the guy that designed Carbone. Don't come to me.
By the way, also a great restaurant, which we ate at in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just.
But Adam, I will say one of the introductions
of the week.
Yeah, one of the introductions I had to as a younger person in my 30s to really amazing food and design that created the experience was Per Se at the former Time Warner Center, right at Columbus Circle. So that really changed everything. I think you're in the middle of redoing that place now.
We redid it already.
It's already open. See,
it's open. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to go check that out. So, what was that like when you help create a place that's world class and then go ahead and have to reinvent it and reintroduce it?
The pain in the neck.
Yeah.
Very, very difficult. So I'm going to go back 32 years before that. 32 years ago, I was teaching restaurant design at the School of Visual Arts in New York. We lost Anthony.
He'll be back, I'm sure. I don't know what happened. Maybe it's a dog issue. Go on, though.
32 years ago, I was teaching restaurant design at the School of Visual Arts in New York. And full class of students, and one of the students stuck out to me. He wasn't like the age of the rest of the students, was sitting in the back, taking notes, all kinds of stuff. So I stopped him after the class and I said, "Excuse me, what do you do?" He says, "Oh, I am a chef." I said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." "And what are you doing here?" He said, "Well, I one day I'm going to build, my own restaurant, and I want to know everything about it. I don't want to make mistakes. It's going to be the biggest expense of my life." And I said, "Really? Well, that's admirable." And I gave him my hand and I said, "I'm Adam Tihany." He says, "I'm Thomas Keller."
Wow.
That's how we met. And years later, he calls me and he says, "I'm in California. I have something for you. You want to come and work with me?" So we've been working for years and years together. The per se brief was very interesting because we wanted to bring the French Laundry to New York with in an urban setting, in a very the urban setting here, the Time Warner building could not have been more different than a beautiful.
Right. And this building itself, for those who don't know, very modern steel, glass.
Exactly.
Huge high ceilings in the lobby because they also had a shopping complex. Go on. Sorry.
The French Laundry is a beautiful country house in Yountville, Napa Valley. It's like it couldn't be any more different. So he said, what's important for me is the ethos of the restaurant and the timelessness. He says, I want to build this to last. I want a restaurant that will last for 30, 40 years, which is obviously the dream of every restaurateur and every designer for that matter. Because if you're creating such a lasting legacy for him, you're creating it for yourself as well.
Yeah.
Design standpoint. So very complicated process. Thomas is extremely detail oriented, as I'm sure you know.
Well, you have to be to get to his level.
And involved with everything, which is super important. An educated customer is everything. But here, it's not just a customer; it's a friend. It's a responsibility. I mean, I pride myself to design portraits of my clients. I'm a portrait artist or like a custom tailor.
Wow.
What I do is create something that will make them look good and feel good. Because if they do, they will be much easier for them to operate the place. So, So
you were looking at a picture of the Thomas Keller on the grill on a Seabourn ship. Sorry.
Yes. Well, this is kind of more of a like a steakhouse concept. He loves this design. It's very somewhere between a cruise ship and a luxury train.
I will say yes. It really feels steakhousey. Old school travel, but very modern at the same
very
time.
Chic. It's very, completely surprising on the ship they were walking. And this was a very dark, black Asian restaurant. Everything was black and dark and so on and so forth. I mean, anyway, he likes this romanticism of the 50s and 60s, his whole concept of, the tack room, which we have one in Miami here. We had one at the Hudson Yards. There's also this kind of pseudo deco 50s design with Steak Diana and Caesar salad made at the table. So you have to listen to what they want to do, how they want to serve, table side, this, that. It all affects the design.
Right.
Everything evolves around the end game is where the chef wants to take this place to, and not the other way around. Or it's not like the tail wagging the dog; it's the other way around. So
right,
it's a
yeah. You're still muted.
Yeah, and I think the fact that I was a restaurateur for a considerable amount of time, inflicting on myself the punishment of owning a restaurant, as you know, it makes it very easy to these chefs to relate to me. They don't have to explain to me what's a service station. They don't have to explain to me what it takes, what's the connection between front and back of a house, what are performers. I've done it myself for years, so we are past the technicalities and we go straight into the concept.
Beautiful.
So
Anthony?
I've been fortunate enough to eat at Per Se early on, and he took me through a tour of the kitchen, and I've always been amazed of, as I remember, the kitchen was bigger than I anticipated.
It was bigger than anybody anticipated.
Just so everybody knows, in New York, kitchens are like the size of your desk table.
Anthony, it's 60% of the space.
Yeah, wow. I wanted to make sure my memory was correct. That's what I remember.
60%.
Why? Tell me why.
I'm going to give you an example that maybe will explain why in a roundabout way. At Per Se, they serve, let's say, 120 meals a day. Okay?
Yep.
120, that's 1.5. That's 2 times two times turnover.
Right.
Do you know how many plates they use for the 120 meals?
700?
No. 4,200. 4,200. Now, do I have to tell you why you need a big kitchen?
Wow.
You understand from this metaphor here, why.
Just right. I haven't even gotten to area.
And you're not exaggerating. You're saying the actual.
I mean, the intensity of the presentation. I don't know if you remember, you get a plate that has 5 plates, one on top of each other. Then you have 6 plates on the side with the side ramekins where they pour things into it. And then the bread, the butter, by the time they finished, you said, oh my God, who's washing these dishes?
Right.
And the glasses of wine. I mean, come on. I mean,
It's funny you said that because, one, I've been wanting to ask that question to somebody since the day I left that restaurant. So
you could have called me immediately.
If I stay alive long enough, I get to ask all my questions. Number one,
I love it. Life goal unlocked.
Yeah, listen, I'm
And then number 2, the one thing I remember talking about dishes, and I talk about it from time to time, is the dishwasher. His outfit was Chef White's, and there wasn't a stain on his outfit. And he was the dishwasher.
He's the dishwashing supervisor.
Okay.
All the glasses, the real stuff, you can't wash in the washing machine. It's all washed
right. You have to do by hand. Yeah. Yeah.
This is just the washing, but the cooking is also, pretty much. It's well. Plus, to be fair, the size of the kitchen actually produced all the baked goods for Bouchon Bakery, which was on the 3rd floor, and produced also. And plus, there's a separate kitchen for private parties, and et cetera, and a beautiful pastry department. If you remember, chocolate room and all that. So they make everything on premise. And, when people complain about prices, my suggestion to Thomas was start the experience in the kitchen. Take them through the kitchen to see what on earth it takes to make something like this. Nobody will complain about anything.
Right.
Yeah.
I resent paying $80 for a plate of eggplant parmesan at Carbone. I mean, I think that is ripoff. But to pay $150 for Thomas Keller,
right,
pearls and onion and
everything's a source.
I said, oh my God! I mean, it's a bargain basement price. Seriously.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's funny that when they brought me through the kitchen, I didn't care about the price. There was something about going
Exactly.
to that kitchen that made me feel like I understand. Like I understand. First of all, I know I'm in New York. I'm at the Time Warner Building. And listen, if you're going to Per Se and you know what it is, you know what do they say? At Per Se, if you ask how much you pay, you shouldn't be going.
Right. But here, listen, on the flip side of the coin, I just had dinner a couple of days ago here in Miami in an absolutely extraordinary sushi restaurant. I mean, it just beyond. I mean, it was like you're eating in Tokyo in a private dining room. Spectacular place called Shingo. Unbelievable. And it was $600 a person. And nothing is cooked. There's a guy there slicing fish in front of you and put it on a little mound of rice.
Hey, listen, it could cost $500.
What am I paying for? He says the airplane to fly the fish in from Tokyo. What do you mean?
Right.
So, it's all relative, because if you and you eat this fish and it's like, I've never had anything like this in my life. How much is that worth?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
Listen,
experience-driven economy. That makes a lot of sense. Anthony, sorry.
At some point, when people and Glenn's heard me say this, when I ran a cabaret at the Oak Room, at the Algonquin called the Oak Room, and it was failing when I took over. And I told everybody around me, I was like, the people coming to this room that pay $500 at 9:00 at night to hear a cabaret singer sing their American songbook, they're not looking for the greatest of anything. What they're looking for is something they haven't felt before. These people bought it, they sold it, they invented it.
Right.
You need to give them a feeling. Now, for someone like you that walks into a place like that and can afford to spend $600, you're looking to be completely absorbed because truly you bought it, sold it, invented it. So if they're impressing you, they're at a level that most people can't get to.
Of course. But, listen, I was sitting in front of Chef, luckily, and I was watching Giacometti making sculptures for 2 hours.
That's amazing. Right.
I said, if you want another 600, I'll pay for it. You're kidding? It was unbelievable. So put it all together, and the room was like, super minimalist. I mean, Anthony, come down, you guys, to Miami. Well, I'll invite you to this place.
Awesome.
It really blew me away completely.
All right, let me go check Delta real quick right now.
It's only $250 from New York. I'm gonna give you a $600 dinner. Come on.
Yeah. Totally worth it. All right. So I've had the honor of doing some keynotes for our friend Jean over at the Global Hospitality Talk, and you got the Outstanding Achievement Award from them. Pretty amazing. What was that experience like for you?
Make you feel old a little bit when you start getting these awards that I wrap up your career. It means
It's not a lifetime achievement.
It's not a lifetime, but it's getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah, my lifetime is not finished. I don't know. Chen was very generous and lovely, and
he's great.
It's very sweet, and getting recognized with the peers in the room and so on and so forth. It's always very nice. And truth is, I'm pretty good at what I'm doing, so might as well.
Are you still working on projects, or are you really retired?
I am kind of retired. Retired. I sold my business to my partner, and I'm on the third. Let's put it this way: the third phase of my life.
This is the perfect segue. You're at the give back part, and you're down there at FIU right now. You can hear Dr. Producer Suzanne, who's doing the show, but also cackling through his microphone, which I really appreciate because at least someone is enjoying my stuff today. So what are you doing with those great folks down there?
Well, Suzanne and I are putting together this new concept, which we are, it's sort of a little bit of an uphill battle, but we are pushing through it. It's a graduate program in hospitality design that has two faculties collaborating together for the first time, hand in hand. So the Faculty of Hospitality Management, where we are at the moment here at Chapman School, and the CARTA, the School of Architecture and Design, which is in the other campus. So the idea here is this: the hospitality management students are working on programming restaurants. For example, Suzanne and I came up with 7 types of restaurants. They have to write the pro forma, come up with the concept, to describe the concept, and then they sort of hire the architecture students to execute.
Cool.
So de facto becoming the client.
Yeah.
So it is studio classes. It's extremely practical. And our goal is that if you graduate from this program, is like de facto you worked for 2 years in an actual restaurant design office.
I do want to warn everyone. He said studio classes. It's not Studio 54 classes. You don't get to. You don't get to
500 classes.
Yeah.
Here. There's no futzing around here. It works.
Yeah.
Studio classes meaning you have to actually do projects.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And that is great because, as you said, it'll give you all of that experience that will get you ahead. And in this day and age, you need every little bit that you can in order to be better than that person next to you.
Exactly. And so we're starting with restaurants, hopefully move on to hotels and maybe end up with cruise ships. Again, it's a matter of complexity and how many students you get, because it's actually you need larger and larger groups to do such a huge projects. I mean, last cruise ship that I was a creative director for had 40 restaurants, bars, nightclub, 40. So, you need an army of students to do something like that. But the hope is that this will take traction. I mean, we were having a conversation early on, and I said, but by far, hospitality design is the sexiest segment of the profession. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
Hospitality gets so much publicity and everybody wants to talk about it. And now design, we are in a century of design. Everybody wants design. I mean, guys, just think about the fact that 20 years ago, we didn't have an iPhone.
Right.
Would you believe that?
Oh, it seems like we've always had.
No, we didn't have an iPhone. And the iPhone is one of the better designed piece of hardware that you can find. So once you get used to holding and touching your iPhone, suddenly you say, well, you know what? Why is my toothbrush not so nice? Why is my comb have to be this, and it goes all design. So it's a very privileged and good time to promote design and to teach design, and I'm very fortunate that I can afford to do it.
Amazing.
They ain't paying anything.
Yeah. Well, it's a university. Yeah, I was an adjunct professor at a university in New York, and
so I'm back to 1980 now.
That's terrible. Anthony, any final thoughts with our
No, it's just an honor to be on the show with you.
I would like to, I love your comedy show. It's great. It's like this Saturday morning live.
You have to have a hangover in order to appreciate it.
Talking to you, Anthony, I'm getting to know you a little bit, which is cool. And I my invitation is here. Shingo.
Yeah.
Please come to Miami. We go eat some sushi.
All right, let's do it. Mr. Tihany, thank you so much for being here. And thanks to all of you folks out there for being here today. Of course, you're going to want to re-listen to this one. So make sure you download our show wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to re-watch us, all shows are housed at novacancynews.com and our respective social media sites. So thanks everyone for being here. And remember, you've got one life. So blaze on and
be kind to yourself.
See you next time.